All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going on a bit of a philosophical journey to explore this fundamental, almost primal relationship between I, you, and, well, existence itself. This is really a quest into the heart of one of the oldest questions we can possibly ask ourselves.
And that question is, of course, who am I? You've asked it, I've asked it, we've all been there, right? Is there some kind of stable core me at the center of it all? Or are we really just a messy bundle of memories, feelings, and experiences? Our goal today is to try and build a solid framework that can help us find a truly meaningful answer. So here's our roadmap for this quest. First, we'll lay down 3 foundational truths to guide us. Then we're going to look at some major philosophies that actually challenge our sense of self. After that, we'll navigate the tricky maze of modern versus postmodern thought, figure out a way to escape it, and finally arrive at our destination, the idea of the authentic human.
Okay, so to start any journey, you need a compass, right? Something to keep you pointed in the right direction. For this philosophical quest, our compass is going to be 3 foundational beliefs, or axioms, that will guide all of our thinking from here on out.
Our first axiom is so simple, it's almost deceptive, but it's incredibly profound. Existence exists. We have to start by accepting that the world around us, reality itself, is real. It's not some elaborate dream or an illusion. This is the solid ground upon which everything else is built.
Okay, second truth. Within that existence, I exist. Now, this isn't just about being a living, breathing body. It's about being aware. It's that recognition of our own consciousness, our own unique point of view on the world. It means we're active players in this reality, not just passive observers.
And this, of course, leads us to our third and maybe most crucial axiom: you exist. This is the big leap. It's acknowledging that there are other minds out there, other conscious beings with their own rich inner worlds. We have to move beyond just seeing other people as objects in our story and truly recognize a reality that exists outside of our own head. Honestly, a lot of the time, the only way we can really understand ourselves is by trying to understand you.
So, when you put them all together, existence exists, I exist, and you exist, these 3 axioms form our working doctrine. Now, don't get hung up on that word. This isn't about rigid dogma. Think of it more as a framework, a set of core principles we're going to use to tackle the really complex philosophical challenges that are coming up next.
But here's the thing. Not everyone agrees with these axioms, especially that second one, I exist. So now, let's take a look at some really powerful philosophical ideas that throw a wrench in the whole notion of a stable, unified self.
Let's start with the philosopher David Hume. He argued that if you actually try to look inside your own mind, you never find a single, solid self. What do you find instead? A constant stream of perceptions, thoughts, and feelings. He saw the mind less like a solid thing and more like a kind of patchwork quilt of experiences, always shifting and changing. From this point of view, that solid I we feel, well, it might just be an illusion. And then you've got Baruch Spinoza. His whole philosophy, known as pantheism, basically suggests that everything, you, me, the entire universe, is all just one single divine substance. Call it God, call it nature, it's all the same thing. Now, if that's true, what does that mean for our free will? Is our sense of being an individual making choices just an illusion? Are we really an autonomous I? Or are we more like a single ripple in a much, much larger ocean? And this idea of a vanishing self keeps popping up. Gilbert Ryle famously called the mind a ghost in the machine, basically arguing it's nothing more than the physical activity of our brain. And thinkers from Ghazali to Kierkegaard suggested that a leap of faith is what's really needed for true understanding, which kind of sidelines the rational thinking self. So the bottom line is this. Whether they see us as a bundle of perceptions, a cog in a deterministic universe, or just a biological machine, all of these powerful philosophies chip away at the very foundation of our axiom, I exist. Now, these big philosophical ideas don't just stay in old books. Nope, they seep out and shape our entire culture. So let's step into the confusing, often contradictory maze of our current world, which is really defined by 2 huge competing forces, modernism and postmodernism. Okay, here's the central conflict in a nutshell. Think of modernism as this grand project to build a giant, perfectly engineered skyscraper. It has a huge purpose, a grand design, but each individual worker, each I, is just a tiny replaceable cog in the machine. Then postmodernism comes along in reaction and says, forget the skyscraper. Let's each build our own weird, unique hut. It champions the individual, for sure, but in a world where everyone has their own separate personal truth, the you, that essential connection to others, can start to feel totally irrelevant. One loses the I, the other loses the you. And this chart from the theorist David Harvey just breaks down this clash so beautifully. Just look at some of these differences. Modernism is all about purpose and hierarchy. It wants to build one big unified truth, what it calls logos. But postmodernism, it embraces play and anarchy. It's not about building things up. It's about deconstruction. Modernism wants to center on a core meaning, while postmodernism is all about dispersal, the idea that meaning is scattered everywhere and totally subjective. It's a massive clash in how we even approach the idea of reality itself.
So we're stuck. One worldview risks completely erasing the I, and the other risks erasing the you. So how in the world do we escape this maze? Well, the solution, it turns out, isn't to pick a side, but to evolve our way of thinking to a higher, more integrated level. The psychiatrist Silvano Arietti gave us a really useful model for this. He identified what he called the primary process. That's the illogical, dreamlike thinking of a baby, where the lines between I and you are totally blurred. Then we grow into the secondary process. That's our rigid, rational, cause and effect logic. Very modernist, right? But the goal, the place we want to get to, is the tertiary process, a creative synthesis that manages to combine the structure of logic with the freedom of imagination. And this is the absolute key. Escaping the maze is not about regressing back to some childlike state where anything goes. No, it's about progressing forward, beyond that rigid black and white thinking. The real goal is a mature integration of both structure and freedom, finding a way to hold both the I and the you in a healthy, creative balance.
Which brings us, finally, to our destination. The whole point of this quest is to become what some thinkers call the authentic human. This is the individual who has successfully navigated all this complexity and has actually reached that higher, more integrated level of thinking. So, what does this authentic person actually look like? Well, they don't just wait around to be given meaning. They create it through their own effort. They embrace their freedom, but they also embrace responsibility. I love this idea that they're a life artist, actively finding beauty and purpose in the world. But really, at their very core, they've mastered the most difficult task of all, holding the I and the you in a perfect dynamic balance. The philosopher Martin Buber captured this idea just perfectly. He said, "The soul is not in me, but between me and you." Wow, that's the essence of his famous I-thou relationship. It means our true self, our spirit, our soul. It's not something we find in isolation locked away inside ourselves. It's forged in that sacred space of genuine connection with others. And this profound thought from the 9th century mystic Cuneyadi Baghdadi takes it one incredible step further. It suggests that the absolute highest form of connection, of affection, is one where that boundary between I and you just completely softens, where your empathy is so total that you literally see yourself in the other person. And maybe, just maybe, that is the ultimate answer to the question, who am I?
Welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive into something really fundamental. We're talking existence, the self, and the other. Basically, the bedrock concepts from philosophy and psychology. We've got some fascinating source material here that treats these big ideas not just as, academic points, but as really practical tools for mental health, for ethical living.
Yeah, our sources kick off with this great line from Holderlin. He noticed how we sometimes see the world as everything and ourselves as, well, nothing. Or the flip side, the self is everything, the world is nothing. And this dive is all about finding that crucial balance, that healthy middle ground.
Exactly. And that tension, that existence, non-existence question, that's really where psychological strength gets built, or where it breaks down. If you don't have a solid footing with a basic fact of existence, well, your identity, your ability to connect with others, it all becomes pretty unstable.
Okay.
So our goal here really is to lay out 3 core axioms. Foundational beliefs, you could say, things you implicitly need to accept for psychological maturity.
First, existence exists. Simple, right? But crucial. Second, you exist, which we internalize as I exist. And third, something else exists. There's something or someone besides you, the other. Getting these 3 facts firmly grounded in our minds. Well, that's the launch pad for everything else we'll discuss.
Okay, let's unpack that second one first. The affirmation, I exist. Our sources really hammer home that denying your own existence, or even just denying your free will, it's not just some philosophical word game, is it?
Not at all. It leads to some serious psychological and ethical problems down the line.
Right.
And to really get why affirming the self is so vital, we kind of have to look at the philosophies that have tried to, well, pull it apart. They often do it by reducing the individual down.
Down to what? Like just a machine?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Or just a jumble of parts, an accident almost.
And David Hume seems like a key figure here, challenging that cohesive self.
Oh, absolutely. Hume is critical. He famously went looking for the I, introspectively.
He couldn't find it.
Couldn't find it. He argued the mind wasn't this unified soul, this single enduring thing. Instead, he saw it as what our sources call a patchwork mind.
A patchwork mind, like a quilt.
Exactly like a quilt, just a collection of perceptions, sensations, experiences, constantly shifting. No central thread holding it all together. And if the mind is just this stream of temporary states, then the whole idea of a stable, integrated I, it just dissolves.
Which has huge implications. Because if I'm just a random collection of patches, well, I can't really be responsible for the whole quilt, can I? It sort of lets you off the hook.
Precisely. That's the danger. And that kind of reductionist thinking, it got amplified later on. Think about Gilbert Ryle.
Okay, Ryle. What was his angle?
Ryle attacked the whole mind-body split idea, Descartes' dualism. He called the mind or soul, separate from the body, just a ghost in the machine.
A ghost in the machine. I like that phrase.
Yeah, it's memorable. Essentially, Ryle saw humans as, well, sophisticated biological machines. Robots, basically. Consciousness for him wasn't some separate substance. It was just an emergent property of the brain's workings.
So first, the self is a fragmented quilt with Hume, then it's a biological machine with Ryle. But the sources also mention Spinoza. His pantheism feels very different from robots and machines. Why is he included?
That's a good question. Spinoza's framework is different, yeah. It's metaphysical, not materialist. But the effect on the individual, it can be surprisingly similar. His view is that only God, or nature, which for him are the same thing, is the true single substance. Everything else, including us, are just modes of that substance.
Okay.
Now, that's a beautiful, holistic vision in many ways. But it can subtly undermine the idea of a unique, truly autonomous individual. We're just expressions of this one big substance. Where does our distinct agency, our limited free will really fit in, our moral responsibility?
It gets fuzzy.
It does. So the sources argue that the core danger in all these views, whether it's strict determinism or a mechanism like Ryle, or even some interpretations of Spinoza, is that they risk turning humans into puppets.
Puppets of biology or fate or cosmic substance.
Exactly. And once you genuinely believe you're just a puppet or a robot, you lose the very foundation for ethical choice. For responsibility, it evaporates.
And this isn't just abstract philosophy. We see this denial of self play out in some really disturbing ways in psychology, don't we?
We certainly do. The sources bring up Cotard syndrome as an extreme example.
What's that?
It's a rare, severe psychiatric condition where the person genuinely believes they don't exist. They might insist they're dead, or that they have no internal organs, that they're just nothing.
Wow. That's terrifying.
It is. And it starkly underlines how incredibly important that basic conscious acceptance of I exist really is. When a philosophy or an ideology tells you that your personal will doesn't exist or doesn't matter, it's actually echoing, in a way, a kind of psychotic breakdown.
Yeah.
So affirming I exist, maybe with that limited free will, that Cousier-Red concept, it's really the bedrock of sanity.
Okay, so that's the first critical step. Affirm the self. I exist, but the moment I do that, I'm confronted by, well, everything else. Which brings us to that essential third axiom. Something else exists. Recognizing the other.
Yes, and this is the crucial leap. It's the move from just self-awareness to ethical awareness. If you only affirm the I, you risk getting stuck in solipsism.
Solipsism, the idea that only my own mind is sure to exist.
That's the one. Logically, it's actually quite hard to definitively disprove. You can't absolutely prove other minds exist in the way you experience your own. But our sources argue it's fundamentally irrational. Why? Because we don't become fully human in isolation. We become human in relation to others.
And the key thinker for understanding that relationship, according to the sources, is Martin Buber, his I and thou idea.
Buber is absolutely essential here. He draws this powerful distinction between two fundamental ways of relating. The highest form is the I-thou relationship.
I-thou.
Yes, this is a genuine encounter, face-to-face, person-to-person, where you meet the other person fully, in their whole being and they meet you. It's mutual recognition.
Okay.
In those moments, Buber says the relationship itself can feel like it creates a we. And interestingly, he argues that the spirit, the real meaning, doesn't live inside the I or inside the thou. It lives in the space between them.
Wow. Okay.
All right, today we're going to tackle a really big one, Martin Buber's I and Thou. It's this short, pretty dense book from the 20th century, but wow, the main idea in it, it's a total game changer for how you can look at your own life and really reality itself.
So let me just start by asking you this. How do you see the world? I mean, really, when you look around you at the people in your life, the trees outside your window, even your job, what are you actually seeing? Is it all just a bunch of stuff, things to be figured out, to be used, or could it be something more?
Well, this is where the philosopher Martin Buber comes in. He basically says that our whole reality, everything we experience, is shaped by our attitude. The world isn't just one static thing out there. Nope. He says it's twofold, and which world you're living in depends completely on the stance you decide to take. And Buber gets at these two fundamental ways of being through something he calls primary words. Now, don't get hung up on the term. These aren't just, words you say. Think of them more like keys. Keys that unlock two completely different worlds. Okay, so what are they? They are I, thou, and I, it. And what's so wild about this idea is that Buber didn't see them as just labels for things. For him, when you really speak one of these words, and I mean with your whole being, you are literally bringing a type of reality into existence right then and there. And believe me, the difference between these two it's night and day. The I world, that's the world of experience. It's all about objects, things that have already happened, stuff you can analyze and use. But the I-thou world, that is a world of relation. It's about a real meeting, an encounter with another being, right here in the now.
All right, so let's dig into the first one, the world of it. And honestly, this is where most of us live most of the time. This is our default setting, you could say. It's the world where we see everything and, everyone as a kind of collection of objects.
And let's be clear, this I-it way of seeing things is absolutely necessary. We couldn't function without it. It's how we get stuff done. We analyze things. We categorize them. We use tools. It's how we make sense of a really complex world made of separate things. It's practical, it's orderly, and it's reliable. Buber gives this really great example using a tree. Think about it. I can look at a tree as an it in so many ways, right? I can see it as a pretty picture, just a splash of green. I can see it as a biological process, something to study, or as a specific species to classify. I can even break it down into the physical laws that govern it. You see, in every single one of those cases, the tree is my object. It has its own space, its own boundaries. It's that thing over there, totally separate from me. It's something I can observe and understand, but always from a distance. But then, Buber says something else can happen. Something totally different is possible. We can actually shift our entire way of being and move out of that it world and into a profound encounter with thou. And this isn't just about a change in perspective. It's about being in the world in a completely different way. Buber describes this shift so well. He says that as he's looking at the tree, he can suddenly become bound up in relation to it. And in that moment, poof, the tree is no longer an it. It just stops being an object. Okay, so this is a really key point. You don't experience a thou. Experience is something you do to an it. See the difference? With a thou, you enter into a relationship. It's mutual. That feeling of separation between you and the other, it just melts away in this moment of pure, shared presence. So where can we find these incredible encounters? Buber points to three main areas. First, there's our life with nature, that kind of deep connection you can feel that's almost beyond words. Second, and maybe most obviously, is our life with other people, where this kind of relationship can be so open and direct. And third, there's our life with spiritual forms. Think of an artist totally lost in their creation, feeling like the work is speaking through them. Yeah, this is no small thing. It's not a casual act at all. Saying I-it is easy. We can do that with just a little piece of ourselves. But Buber is crystal clear on this. To say I-thou, it demands everything you've got. It's an act of your whole entire being. Okay, but here's where things take a turn. A really interesting one.
Buber argues that this I-thou encounter, as amazing and profound as it is, always comes with something he calls an exalted melancholy. Why? Because these moments, well, by their very nature, they just can't last.
Think of it like a flash of lightning. A true I-thou relationship has that kind of intensity, that kind of presence. It can only exist in the immediate now. But the second that now slips into the past, the relationship, it starts to change. It actually follows a kind of natural cycle. So first, a thou appears to you, right here in the present. That leads to this moment of direct, whole-to-whole relation. But that intensity can't hold. As it fades, that living, breathing thou inevitably becomes an it again. It turns into a memory, an object from the past that you can now look back on, analyze, and describe. And this next quote, man, it just perfectly captures the bittersweet heart of what Buber is saying. That every single thou in our world must become an it. It's our fate. Every profound connection, sooner or later, has to fall back into the world of objects. The person you fell in love with becomes your partner, with a list of qualities. That breathtaking sunset becomes a photo on your phone.
So does that mean the world of it is bad? That we should try to live only in these thou moments? No, not at all. Actually, Buber's final and maybe most important point is that we have to learn to live with both. We need to navigate the tension between these two essential worlds.
I mean, think about it. Life would be completely impossible if we tried to stay only in that pure present of thou. We absolutely need the world of it. It's how we organize society, build things, do science, how we survive, period. It's what gives our world structure and order.
And this brings us to probably the most famous line in the whole book, and it just sums everything up perfectly. Without it, man cannot live, but he who lives with it alone is not a man. We need the world of objects to survive, for sure. But a life lived only in that world, a life that's all function and no relation, that, Buber says, isn't a fully human life.
And this is exactly why Buber is so relevant right now. He was worried, even back then, that the modern world was just relentlessly expanding the world of it. Through technology, through systems, through commerce, everything is designed to be efficient and transactional. And that can make it so much harder for us to have those genuine I-thou encounters. So the big takeaway here isn't about choosing one world and ditching the other. Not at all. For Buber, a real meaningful life is found in the constant, graceful movement between them. It's like a dance. It's about having the skill to navigate and organize the world of it, while always remaining open to those moments of grace when you can encounter a thou. And that really just leaves us with one final question, and it's a personal one for you. In this world that we live in, a world that is constantly pushing us toward efficiency, toward it, in your job, in your relationships, even in how you see nature, where are you going to make this space to seek and to truly meet a thou?
So our essence isn't just internal, it's relational. It happens in that between. What's the alternative? What's the danger if we fail to achieve that I-thou connection?
The danger is falling back into the I-thou relationship. Eat. This is when you treat the other person, or even nature or an object, as an it. Something to be analyzed, categorized, used, manipulated. An object for your experience or your purpose.
Like a tool.
Exactly. A means to an end. The other person isn't seen in their unique wholeness. They're reduced to a function, a symbol, a thing. It's the opposite of mutual respect. It kills genuine dialogue.
So if we accept these 2 points, I exist as an autonomous I, and you exist as an equally real thou, then things like law and morality seem almost inevitable, don't they? How does that recognition actually give birth to ethics?
It becomes an absolute necessity. Because think about it. When two autonomous conscious beings encounter each other, their interaction will have consequences. It can be beneficial, enhancing life for both. Or it can be harmful, diminishing life.
Right. There's potential for good or bad outcome.
Precisely. Once you truly recognize the other person isn't just an it for you to use, but another thou with their own inherent value, their own limited free will.
Yeah.
Well, then you must create rules of engagement, boundaries, respect.
That's where ethics comes in.
That's exactly where ethical judgments, good, bad, right, wrong, become meaningful and necessary. The relationship itself, the space between the I and the thou, becomes the ground for justice, for fairness, for ethical obligation. We have a responsibility to manage that space well.
That really ties the axioms together. Okay, let's connect this to bigger picture stuff. How do these ideas about the I and the thou relate to those major cultural waves, modernism and postmodernism? Did they get the balance right?
Well, that's where our sources offer a pretty sharp critique. We can actually look at both modernism and postmodernism through the lens of how they handled or mishandled the I and the thou.
Okay, let's start with modernism. Its focus was on what? Universal truth, reason, progress.
Yes, exactly. Universal realism, rationality, scientific progress, building grand systems. That was the modernist project. But its core philosophical mistake, according to our sources, it tended to minimize the individual I.
Minimize the I. How so?
It faded out the I. The emphasis was all on the big structure, the system, the universal rule, the collective. Think large-scale industry, bureaucracy, grand ideologies.
Right.
In that framework, the individual often became secondary, a replaceable part, a cog in the machine, you might say. Personal feelings, unique perspectives, individual autonomy, often sacrificed for the greater good of the system or the ideology. That I got lost in the universal it.
And postmodernism came along largely as a reaction against that, didn't it? Against the rigid structures and the dismissal of the individual.
Exactly right. Postmodernism championed subjectivity, fragmentation, multiple meanings. It was deeply skeptical of all those modernist grand narratives. It was, in many ways, a necessary corrective, giving voice back to the marginalized I.
But it had its own problems.
It did. Its core philosophical error, the sources argue, was that it blurred the thou.
Blurred the thou, meaning?
By emphasizing radical subjectivity. Relativism, the idea that there's no objective truth, only individual interpretations, it made the shared reality, the existence of a knowable other, seem fuzzy, unreliable even.
Okay.
This led to an overemphasis on purely subjective self-realization. Sometimes it tipped over into a kind of practical solipsism. If everything is just my interpretation, if there's no stable ground between us, how can I truly connect with the thou? Doesn't the other just become another? It's something existing only within my subjective bubble.
So it risks isolating the I, again, just in a different way.
Precisely. So the sources reject both extremes. They reject the rigid, almost authoritarian modernist tendency that crushes the I, and they reject the structureless, sometimes navel-gazing postmodern tendency that dissolves the thou and isolates the I.
Okay, so if we need to avoid being cogs in a machine and avoid getting lost in our own subjective bubbles, what's the alternative? What's the healthy path forward?
The goal, the path forward, is toward becoming what the sources call an authentic person.
An authentic person, what does that look like?
Well, this is someone who manages to integrate the best of both worlds in a sense. They understand the need for structure, for shared reality, they affirm the thou, but they also fiercely protect their own unique individuality and freedom. They affirm the I.
So balancing act again.
Always. The authentic person is focused on meaning, not just on following external rules or forms. They have courage. They value freedom, but crucially, they understand freedom isn't absolute. It comes with responsibility towards the other. They don't easily fall into despair or meaninglessness because they're grounded in those three axioms. Existence exists, I exist, and the other exists. They can function within society, contribute to it, without losing themselves.
That sounds like quite a high level of, well, psychological and intellectual maturity. Is there a way to think about how someone develops that kind of thinking?
Yes, there is. Arietti's model of the three processes of thought is really helpful here. It maps out a kind of developmental pathway for thinking, moving towards that authenticity.
Okay, what are the three processes?
So the first is the primary process. This is the kind of thinking that's less controlled by logic or external reality. Think dreams, early childhood thinking, maybe even psychosis in extreme forms.
Right, sort of associative, maybe symbolic.
Exactly. It doesn't follow the usual rules of time, space, or contradiction. It's raw, imaginative, but potentially reality distorting if it's dominant.
Okay, primary process. What's next?
Next comes the secondary process. This is the complete opposite, really. It's your classic, strict, logical, scientific reasoning. Cause and effect. If A, then B.
The kind of thinking modernism really prized.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Its motto could be, there's only one rational path. It's essential for building bridges, doing science, organizing things. But if it's all you have, it leads to rigidity, dogma, the dismissal of anything that doesn't fit the logical box.
So we start kind of messy and imaginative, then we become strictly logical. Where does the authentic person fit in? That sounds like the third stage.
It is. That's the tertiary process. This is the highest stage. Here, the individual doesn't discard the first two, they integrate them. They gain conscious control over both.
How does that work?
They can use the creativity and intuition of the primary process, metaphor, art, insight, but they shape it and test it with the logic and structure of the secondary process. This leads to higher synthesis, real creativity, wisdom.
Okay.
The model for this stage might be, one mind surpasses another. It recognizes multiple valid ways of thinking, the value of dialogue. It uses structure without becoming trapped by it.
And the danger is getting stuck or falling back.
Well, the sources warn that some postmodern thought, in its total rejection of structure and objective reason, risks falling back into a kind of uncontrolled primary process thinking. That attitude of, don't tell me what to think, my feelings are the only reality. It can shut down the integration needed for tertiary thought.
Right, it blocks the synthesis.
Exactly. So the authentic path demands that integration. You take the necessary structure from modernism, the acknowledgement of an objective reality, the Bathau, but you combine it with postmodernism's critical awareness of subjectivity, the value of the unique I. You avoid the rigidity of one and the chaos of the other.
It really is about holding all three axioms together then. Existence, self, and other. It's not just a philosophical checklist, it's the ongoing work of being psychologically healthy.
It truly is. It's a continuous balancing act. That commitment, existence exists, I exist, and the other exists, it underpins everything. A well-lived life, an ethical life, a mentally sound life.
This has really clarified how denying any one of those isn't just an intellectual error, it's like removing a cornerstone from your own foundation.
Absolutely. And it underlines the need to be really wary of any anti-humanist perspective. Any philosophy, any ideology, any system, religious or secular, that downplays or ignores the unique inherent value of the individual I or the reality and value of the thou. It ultimately leads down a destructive path, mentally or socially. It's the mindset that says the system or the idea or the collective is everything, and the individual human is disposable or
insignificant.
Dangerous path.
Extremely.
So, maybe a final thought to leave you with, something building on this idea of human value.
Please.
Our sources suggest, drawing on writers like Dostoevsky and thinkers like Kundalini, that the greatest ethical danger isn't necessarily outright malice. It's often the conviction that you are inherently better than others, that you know what's best for them, that you have the right to impose your view. Kundalini puts it beautifully. You cannot glorify God or existence or whatever ultimate reality you believe in by diminishing the human being. The human isn't some veil obscuring reality. The human is a mirror reflecting it.
A mirror.
Yes. So recognizing your own inherent worth, that I exist, axiom, and equally recognizing the inherent worth of the other, the thou exists, axiom. That recognition isn't selfish. It's actually central to understanding anything larger than ourselves. It's where meaning begins.